Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /MaliciousCompliance, where you'll hear super satisfying stories about people getting exactly what they ask for, not necessarily what they want. And in today's episode, OP teaches his boss a lesson that he'll never forget. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and as always, you can email your stories to this email right here. Back when I was in college, I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with a nice German student. He was a nice guy, and he would often have his friends over. I didn't mind it at all, because I just moved to the area, and I needed new friends anyway. Our landlady though, she was a nightmare. The woman was a small, grumpy lady who would complain over the smallest things. She doesn't live with us, but she tries to control everything. The color of our sheets, the scent of our candles, where we put our stuff, etc. Needless to say, we hated her. Now, we pay for electricity and water, so it doesn't matter if we have our friends or family stay over once in a while, because whatever they consume more of, we foot the bill ourselves anyways. My sister visits me once a month for one night, just whenever she's in town. So one day, my landlord found out and she got mad and she wanted to call the cops on us for not respecting the rules of guests cannot spend the night at her property. Now, the only reason she does this is because she feels if a guest would stay a night, then they would have to pay her rent for the full month. The whole month. But cue the malicious compliance. When one of my German roommate's friends was laid off from his main job, he was left homeless with only a grave shift part-time job. He asked if he could stay with us for about a week or two. I told him I didn't mind, but my landlady might mind. They told me not to worry. The day after, he decided to stay with us because she checks on us unannounced every other day, and she also has security cameras outside the door. Of course, the landlady finds out, and she was fuming when she found out. The woman threatened to call the cops on us again, and all my roommate said was, "But you told us explicitly that no one can spend the night at your property. And he's never here at night because he's working, so there's no rule broken here." And we can't believe it worked. She had nothing to say and she left. We could hear her screaming from inside her car that was parked right outside. Yeah guys, I don't know where OP's from, but it definitely sounds like what the landlord is doing is highly illegal. Like showing up randomly to check the place and also has security cameras right outside OP's place to essentially spy on them. Yeah, that's a little bit too much, guys. So OP does come and leaves these 2 comments that show how insane this landlord actually was. OP writes, "Once, she shows up at our door with a white fur rug in tow, and I asked why. The woman said she happened to see us on camera hauling in a purple rug. She hates the color purple, so she brought us a new rug to use. And she also brought us candles from Bath & Body Works, one of the cinnamon ones. And I thought that was really nice. Now I personally don't like the smell of cinnamon, so I never lit it up. So the next time she came to collect my roommate's rent, she asked why it doesn't smell like cinnamon. I didn't want to offend her, so I said I still have a few left that I've already used halfway, so I didn't want to light a new one up. She then revealed that she bought it, so I'd stopped lighting my lavender-scented candles. I asked her if there were complaints from the neighbors or something like that. And she says she doesn't like the lavender smell, that she's afraid that if she wants to one day move back into this property years down the road, that the walls would smell like lavender. I had just started my lease a month ago at this point, and still had a whole 11 months of living there to do. So yeah, she definitely sounds like a great landlady. And guys, if you're listening and you have tips on how to deal with a landlord like this, maybe leave them in the comments. It might help someone out who's dealing with something like this. So about 2 months ago, my neighbor moved out. Now we weren't hangout level friends, but we were cordial with each other. We had this agreement that if the other one wasn't home when a package came, we would go and grab it and give it to each other when they got home, as my neighborhood is littered with porch pirates. So about a month ago, my new neighbor moves in, and he has a package arrive. The guy's not home, and from my window, I can see a teenager clearly scoping out his front porch. The kid was walking back and forth for a good 10 minutes just eyeing the package. So I figure I'll just go grab the package, keep it safe, and then make the same arrangement with him. An hour or so later, my neighbor pulls into the driveway, and I come out to meet him with his package. I hand him the package and give him the rundown about package thieves in the area. And as I'm about to explain how someone was about to take his package, the guy loses his absolute mind and he says, "Hey, I don't need your effing help. Did I ask? Mind your own damn business and leave me the F alone." The guy then storms off into his house, and I'm thinking, okay, cool. So fast forward to yesterday. I'm outside doing the yard, flowers, blah blah blah, and the neighbor isn't home. So the Amazon guy comes and drops off a package on the dude's doorstep. Cue the malicious compliance. So not 5 minutes after the Amazon guy leaves, here comes a porch pirate. The guy just grabs the package and just casually starts walking back to the sidewalk. Just as the thief makes the sidewalk, the idiot pulls up into his driveway and the thief takes off running. The guy gets out of his car and starts screaming at me, asking me why I didn't stop him. I tell him, nah dude, I believe you told me you didn't need my help and to mind my own damn business, so that's what I did. The guy then gets all pissy and runs into his house, and you could hear him breaking stuff. It was hilarious. So OP does come back with an update that says, the guy knocks on my door late yesterday evening and apologized for acting the way he did. We shook hands. See guys, it only took a stolen package off his porch to go apologize to OP for acting like a jerk. It's also insane how a porch pirate just grabs a package right in front of OP and just walked off. People are getting really bold nowadays. And you know what? It's probably because they know people would rather take out a camera and film them than to do anything about it. So, slight backstory. I was working as a bar manager in a student pub. The new owner and I hated each other, and it was actually scary just how deep that hatred ran. However, I was his fastest bartender and simply too popular amongst the other employees to just fire. So instead, he would always belittle me in front of clients or other staff members and find ways to make my job more insufferable. I'm guessing in hopes that I would just simply quit. So the bar was at the front of the store. The exit was right by the front entrance, which led through a caged-off alley, which led to the alley where we dumped all the garbage from the bar and the restaurant. We had always carried the refuge out that way. It was easy, effective, and we didn't have to walk through the restaurant carrying garbage bags. So obviously the new owner made the rational decision to start locking that way off and forbidding us from using it. That meant that we now had to walk through the restaurant, where the people were eating, then up a mini stairwell and through the kitchen. Now I don't even know how many health and safety regulations that this was violating. I had protested this several times at staff meetings, explaining to him that us not being allowed to go that way doubled the trip, which left the bar a man short for double the time, and it was also double the time for the bags to tear, considering they were usually filled with heavy and sometimes broken bottles, and mostly it was just unsanitary walking through the restaurant and kitchen with bags that were usually dripping fluids. Obviously the boss refused and said we will continue doing it his way. So cut forward a few nights later and the place was packed, like to overcapacity. But for in case it wasn't clear, safety concerns weren't much of a priority for this idiot. I should also point out that the bar only had one garbage bin, which had filled up several beer bottles ago. The other bartenders had been ignoring it because if you're carrying out garbage bags, then you're not serving customers. And if you're not serving customers, you're not making any tips. So I decided to take this task upon myself and to venture out of the bar. I felt like Frodo carrying the ring to Mordor. As I mentioned, the bag was already over its recommended weight capacity, so I had to get through the crowd fast because I could feel it was going to tear quickly. Some of the glass had broken inside the bag too, and started to cut me as I tried carrying the bag from the bottom to keep it from tearing open, all the while fighting my way through a crowd of drunk students. I finally made it to the mini stairwell by the kitchen, where the drunk owner and a random girl were sitting on the stairs. The bag was now super close to tearing, and my hands were covered in blood by getting cut by the glass. I tried getting my stupid boss's attention, begging him to move so I could get past him. The boss ignored me. I'll say that the first time, it was entirely possible that he might not have heard me over the crowd and the loud music. So I tried again. This time, he looked straight at me and told me to walk past with a smirk on his face. At this point, cue the malicious compliance. My boss clearly wasn't moving, as he felt he needed to inconvenience me, and as I lifted the bag right over him and the girl, it tears open right above them, drowning them both in dripping bottles of beer and pieces of shattered glass. Now I did feel bad for the girl, as she didn't deserve this. As for the owner, screw that guy. The kitchen staff had heard the crash and screams and ran out to clean the mess. I tried helping, but they told me to go back to the bar. A few seconds later, the owner comes storming into the bar, screaming at me, asking me what possessed me to try to lift a garbage bag over the head of him and a customer. I innocently said that I wouldn't have had to if he had let us go through the alley. The owner then gave me the biggest death glare that I had ever gotten. He then takes the alley key off his keyring, throws it at me, and storms out of the bar. So even though I'd been forced to cover the girl in glass to get my point across, I still walked out of this battle victorious. So yeah guys, clearly the boss put OP in a no-win situation there at the stairwell, and that idiot deserved that nasty beer all over him. As for the girl, she might have deserved it too, because, OP's boss was making life difficult for OP at that point, and if you see that someone is acting like an a-hole to make someone else's life harder and you also don't move out of the way, I'm not saying she deserved it, guys, but she could have moved out of the way for OP, because that's the nice and polite thing to do. Alright, so my father died 20 years ago, and he left me a tiny cabin house. He loved that place. He built it himself and tended to it religiously. After he died, I couldn't find it in my heart to visit because every rock on the wall and every flower reminded me of him. Now, my mother never cared for it even when Dad was alive, so within a few months, I realized that it would be a while before either of us would be ready to spend time there again. As such, we called up the electricity, the telephone, and water companies to shut off the services to the cabin, until further notice. While the other companies complied without an issue, the water company decided that this request could only be made by the person whose name was on the bill. Mind you, their fee was less than €2 a month. Repeatedly faxing the death certificates as well as the next of kin transfer of the title got us nowhere. Dozens of calls per month, several emails, in-person applications, smoke signals, interpretive dances, telepathy, nothing made a difference. Both me and my mother were entirely flabbergasted, so we asked around and found out that indeed the process is unsolvable. Albeit not technically legal, people stopped paying those fees and the water would get shut off anyway as a result. Getting lawyers involved wouldn't be worth the money, so we did just that. We discontinued the bank account and never gave it another thought. So 2 weeks ago, while at my family house, I get a call from the water company. They were closing inactive accounts at the 20-year mark and my father's cabin was up. They did, however, tell me that 1. There was a pending sum of $11.93 to be paid for the account to be closed, and 2. The account owners themselves had to make the application to close the account. Once again, I mentioned the whole, hey, my dad's dead, right? But in a reminiscing demonstration of absolute absent-mindedness and stupidity, the response I got was, unfortunately they have to show up in person, as we need a paper copy for accounts older than X amount of years. Otherwise, we can't proceed. Now, I don't know how widely common this is, but in my country, you rent the burial site and grave for 3 to 5 year increments. My father's grave's 20 years were up in August, and my mother decided that it was time to unearth his bones and surrender the site. As such, we had just been delivered a very respectful package with my father's remains, cleaned and curated, only that week. Now, everyone that's ever gone through the process would instantly recognize the box for what it was, and what it was great timing. So 2 days later, I go to the local water company's office. I went there wearing my most purple, silky goth outfit with dark makeup and oh so heathen jewelry, and carried the large bag with me. I asked to speak to the same supervisor, who luckily for me was in an open space with their team's director, and quite a few more desks. After confirming with her why I was there, she starts telling me the whole, hey, he needs to be here in person thing again. I then interrupt her and told her, hey, I know what you'll say, so I brought him with me so he can tell you himself. It was at that point I plopped a Ouija board and a box with my father's remains on the desk, and loudly shushed the area. Heads were turning, and the director looked up with a what the F expression, and the supervisor herself was frozen and wide-eyed. I then placed my hands on the Ouija board, and just as loudly started asking my father's spirit to communicate with me, to show me a sign that he was there with us, to reach out to me from the grave. Everyone was silent. People walking by the door stopped and stared, and I threw a few, Papa, can you hear me? In there as well, for dramatic effect. In comedic timing that happens only once in a lifetime, I think a pen or something small fell down from someone's desk behind me, which against the silent was quite startling. Excitedly, I moved my hand to yes and proclaimed that I needed his help in the form of his signature from the beyond, in order to close his account. Finally, the director snaps out of it and she comes over with an, alright, I can help you over here, I think this is enough. But heck no, it wasn't. I start gathering my things as I laid into them. I let them know that asking to speak in person with a dead man of over 20 years was beyond stupid, and if I had to put up with their idiocy, they had to put up with the process required to get a hold of him. I also mentioned that denying someone's legal title claim was lawsuit worthy, so he immediately changed his tune that I could of course close the account. He tried to bring up the fee, but I cut him off with a don't you even think about it, and then walked out. Now it's still early, but so far there has been radio silent. My mother thanked me for handling it, but when I suggested that she should write to someone higher up about this, she just said, meh, not worth it, it's over now. What a missed opportunity for a water under the bridge comment. Guys, I love how OP brings in a freaking Ouija board and put on that performance. The only thing that would have been better than that is if OP went, oh, you want to talk to my dead dad so badly? Here he is, and just dump the remains all over the desk. So this just happened on my lunch break as I drove to the other side of town to catch in my scratcher. By other side of town, I mean across the invisible border that separates the areas that can sell scratchers and the areas that can't. I drove to this place because I wanted a soda and some snacks. You know, a healthy lunch for a teacher. It's a cool looking mom and pop place, but the second I stepped in, the cashier just gave me an icy stare for some reason. So a little background, I have 3 of my 5 children on the autism spectrum, and though I myself was never diagnosed as a child, I can guarantee that I have similar tendencies, and I have a feeling that my lack of proper eye contact might have had something to do with the cashier's high noon stare, a realization that came to me the second I typed it. So as I was walking into the place, I contemplated cashing the scratcher right away, but I decided to wait until after I got my stuff and then to cash it at the same time. In this indecisiveness, I found myself fumbling around in my pockets and feeling to make sure that I had my car keys. It's a nervous habit that I have. I probably check once every 15 minutes, whether I'm at home, on the road, or even sometimes sleeping. And I can't tell you how many times I checked my pockets, but I can tell you that someone staring at me increases the frequency. I picked my items mentally, but yet again, I checked my pockets to see if I had enough change plus the $5 to pay for the items. It felt like I had enough, and all of a sudden, I hear yelling or something that sounds like blah blah blah, police. I then look up to see a lady right in my face, repeating herself saying, "Empty your damn pockets or I'm calling the police." Now it was borderline funny, and I kind of laughed and started to comply, until she took her gnarly little smoking fingers and dug her nails into my arm. Now I like to consider my pain threshold pretty good, but at this point the woman was seriously hurting me, trying to drag me to the front. I just went along with her and told her, "Ma'am, calm the F down, here." The woman then yelled at me again, screaming, "Empty your effing pockets. You're not getting away with robbing my store, I'm calling the police." Now at this point it's time for malicious compliance as quickly as I can manage. I took this moment to think to myself, oh, I'd better empty my damn pockets before this gets out of hand. Now it was already out of hand, but it just took me a beat to realize. I quickly started emptying my pockets, which had 32 pieces of ripped up scratcher, 3 receipts, my wallet, a straw wrapper, and with everything I took out of my pockets, I smacked it on her checkout area individually, saying, "See? This isn't yours, this isn't yours, this, oh wait, that's not your stuff." I took this opportunity to thoroughly enjoy putting an assortment of ripped up papers upon the counter. Her entire counter was covered in absolute garbage. Now she's got a mess to clean up, but that's just the beginning. I then start emptying my shirt pocket, which had my teacher ID, my pens, my whiteboard marker, and then I put my arms spread out as if to say, "Would you like to check anywhere else? I'm clean." The woman just kept shaking her head at me, and then the cops roll up. I can't believe she actually called the police. As the car pulls up, I couldn't explain how glorious this was, because the lady and I both had satisfying grins on our faces. Her, because she thought I was done for, and she screams in my face, "Now we'll really search you." And me, because it's none other than my school's resource officer. Anyway, the officer walks in, and I was about to let it on that I knew him by addressing him by name. And thank God I didn't, because, that's not a good look. But the guy beats me to the punch saying, "Davis, are you holding up another liquor store?" I tell him, "Hey, I emptied my pockets. If you want to search me, just..." The officer tells me that won't be necessary. I can see your pockets are empty. Did she watch you empty them? Is there a camera? He then turns to the woman and says, "Ma'am, can I ask you a few questions?" He then turned to the lady and told her to follow him. He had her perp walk to the outside of the store, when a kid immediately runs out to her defense. The officer turned toward him and had him sit down next to his mom on the curb outside. By this time, a second police car had arrived at the scene. They had an exchange with the officer, and the officer spoke with the mom, while the new officer comes to speak with me. She asked me the typical questions, like when I got there, whether I'd been there earlier that day, if I knew her or her son before today, etc. She then told me that the other officer checked the camera footage and saw the woman assaulting me, and then asked if I wanted to press charges. Despite the feeling of pain still throbbing through, I simply told her, "Oh, that's not necessary, as long as she knows that I'm not a thief." Now, I wish I could have seen the face on the woman when she realizes that she was the one about to go to jail instead of me, but I did get to see her sitting in the back of the squad car. The woman was repeatedly shaking her head in anger, flailing about, and I could tell you that she was holding back tears as her 20-something son looks on from outside of the car. She got released from her zip-tied wrist, grabbing a waiting piece of paper from the officer, and then she locked the store doors and nonchalantly walked to her vehicle. While all this was happening, Officer 2 had been asking me some more questions, almost trying to talk me into pressing charges, and then hands me a victim rights pamphlet, I guess in case I changed my mind and wanted to turn this into a petty revenge story. Yikes, guys, talk about a plan backfiring hard on that woman. So I guess the moral of the story is, if you think someone is stealing from your store, don't go aggressively grabbing them because you might get charged in the end. And that, my friends, wraps up today's episode of r/malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's satisfying stories. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. A super duper entitled Karen demands an airline captain seat on a plane. Like, the woman literally tries to kick him out of his first class seat, and it doesn't go well. So guys, if you missed it, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.